Hey guys, Sharpend here, and in this video I'm going to show you how to create Mr Fijiwiji's signature vocal chop sound that sounds something like that. In order to create that signature Mr Fijiwiji vocal chop sound, I'm going to show you how I made the vocal chops in my remix of Forward by Dumu and Emiya. So the first thing you want to do is to decide whether you're making a remix or an original with vocals, or if you're making an instrumental song. If you're making a remix, you want to be using the song's acapella to also chop it up and create the vocal chops with, because that way the vocal chops will sound related and coherent with the rest of the song. If you're making an instrumental, you can use multiple singers, multiple acapellas, but it sometimes might be better to use one acapella or at least one singer to vocal chop, because that way you'll have a coherent sound in your chops. So what I did in this case, since it's a remix, is I took the acapella in the first verse, which is this. Maybe under your bed or the back of your shower. And I chopped it up. So the first thing you want to do when you're chopping an acapella is to find one note that will be the starting note, and it will be the only note in the first beat of the first bar. So in this case I chose this one. And afterwards you want to chop up a few notes to create a short melodic line and repeat it throughout the two bars. So here's what I did. So as you can hear, I took the start of the first verse and I just used all the words except the word maybe. So it reminds us of the first verse, but it's somewhat different. So it's easy to remember and listen to it, but it's slightly different. It adds a bit of variation. As you can see, I just repeated that part quite a bit, so it will be easier to remember it. And now you can either repeat these two bars, or you can add some additional variation, which is what I did. I took another note in the first beat of the bar, which is this one, and it also repeats here. And then I just took the same note and repeated it quite a bit. And then the second time this important part repeats, I just added some variation by using different chops. So here it was this part, and in this part it's like this. And then after I have the four bars all set, I can start repeating them. So that's what I did, and I took a vocal sample that helps us go back to the start of the loop, which is this one. As you can see, this vocal sample brings us right back to the start of the loop. And then you can start just copying it and adding a bit of variation, which is what I did. All of this part is the same, and this is a tiny bit of variation. So here it was like this, and here it is. And then this part repeats exactly the same, but it doesn't have that vocal sample that brings us back to the start of the loop, because we want to end the chorus, the drop, and go back to the verses. So here it sounds like this compared to here. So after you have your basic vocal chop loop, you can add two effects that make it sound more interesting sound design wise, but also help it stand out in the mix. So what I added was some distortion and some reverb. So the distortion sounds like this. It's not too much distortion, but it brings out some attack transients, and it also adds some harmonics, which makes it sound slightly more interesting. And another thing that I added was some room reverb. So as you can see, the decay is at 0.5 seconds. The wet is set very high up. And I also made sure to dampen the very high frequencies because they have a lot of tick sounds that are slightly annoying, like these. So I just got rid of them by sort of dampening the sound a bit. And as you can see, it's important to set the mix all the way up because it creates a whole different sound which separates our vocal chop from the rest of the acapella, where it's very dry. So here's how it sounds without these effects, and here's how it sounds with them. Now the important thing is to check it out in the mix so that it stands out. If it doesn't stand out, you can add some additional wet mix to the reverb or add some distortion. So here's how it sounds without this effect. It's very dry and it reminds us of the verse, which is sort of weird. We want to add some variation. So with these effects, it stands out a lot more and it sounds more interesting as well. One more thing that you should notice is that usually Mr. Fijiwiji doesn't pitch shift his vocals way too much. So it's usually the vocal chops are in the original key of the song, like this entire part. It's not pitch shifted at all, but sometimes it does pitch shift things a bit. So don't go like overboard, like a full octave below or above. It will sound pretty weird and unnatural, but just a tiny bit, like here. Here it's pitch shifted 100 cents below, and here it is pitch shifted 300 cents below. So it's very slight, but it helps you reach some notes that maybe the vocalist didn't reach in the rest of the acapella, and it also shortens the process. Instead of looking for a specific note in the entire acapella, you can just pitch shift to also add some interesting flavor, but to not go overboard and pitch shift it all the way down or all the way up. And that is pretty much it. If you found this tutorial helpful, make sure to give it a thumbs up and let me know in the comments what subject you want me to cover up next time.